But I want to start today with talking about just this simple example. Like if you had to do your daily commute without a dashboard, you'd be able to do it, right? Like that's not that complex. You know kind of how fast you're going. This is very comfortable. The challenge is now, like, what if you were dropped into a different country, right? And you're driving on the left side of the road, and the speed limits are in kilometers, not miles. And I looked it up. The first time careless driving offense is up to 6 months in jail in Singapore. Like, now you're not feeling as good about not having a dashboard, right? To me, that's what it's like to be a first-time business buyer, right? Even if it's not your first time, but in a new industry as well, right? You are new to the industry, you're new to operating a small business, you probably have 90% leverage, or at least I did, which makes me not that smart. So you have to remember, the seller of your business, they're from Singapore, right? They know their business. They don't need what you will need to run their business. You're not. So that's why today what I'm really focused on is what makes a good KPI, because like left to our own devices, we'll measure everything, right? So it's like figuring out, hey, what do we actually care about? What should we be measuring as a first-time owner? And then the second section will be, how do we actually do that measurement in a relatively straightforward way without kind of losing your mind? So basically, one of the key concepts here is that a useful KPI helps you understand if something's gone wrong before it's too late to do anything. A lot of people focus on vanity KPIs, like revenue, to me, is a vanity KPI, right? Like by the time your revenue is moving, it's too late. And a key thing about KPIs is whatever you choose as your KPI, that is your clarifying priorities to your team, right? Your team, by watching what you are choosing to measure and talk about, they are learning what you prioritize. So this to me is a helpful indicator. The sign says your GPS is wrong, turn left, right? It tells you before the turn. That's a helpful indicator. This is an unhelpful indicator. Turn right 500 feet ago, right? This is what, to me, a lot of KPIs people focus on is one of these. So you look at like a basic, P&L, every small business owner, they're checking their cash in their bank account every single day. I know that, I do that too, right? That just is part of what it means to be a business owner. By the time cash has changed in your bank account, it is so far too late to do anything about it, right? That is the most trailing of trailing indicators. And so that's that turn right 500 feet ago. And then people view it as like, okay, well, I'm gonna go up the chain, and at least revenue or gross profit, like those are leading indicators. And I think no, like that's turn right 100 feet ago, right? We're still not early enough in the life cycle of our business, of our value chain, to actually do anything about it by the time things have turned into revenue. So just as a quick thought experiment, let's work backwards basically from revenue and keep going leading. I'm a PE guy originally, so like we'll do a widget maker because that's how we think about businesses in PE. But number of widgets sold times price per widget, that's how you get to revenue, right? Those are two leading KPIs of revenue. Pick one of those, number of widgets sold. That's number of orders times widgets per order, right? That's how you get to number of widgets sold. So that's leading. Pick another one, number of orders. You can take that leading. It's your website traffic times your conversion rate, right? That's leading. Pick website traffic, I actually have done more. Oh yeah, it's here. Website traffic goes to paid search and organic search, right? These are actually all of your leading indicators to the output, which is revenue, right? And so if you're starting with revenue, you're already at a set of trailing indicators from what really matters. So quick question, and I will actually ask somebody to answer, so don't be awkward and quiet. But if you couldn't look at your financial statements for the next 3 years, what would you track? Can't track EBITDA, can't track gross margin, can't track revenue, and you can't track cash in your bank account. Say it again? Nice, yep.
Signed engagements.
Signed engagements, nice, yep. Anything else?
Meetings booked with ICP.
Sweet, yep, great. So, oh, I forgot about this part. Well, you guys get it. So let's select KPIs, right? I'm gonna give you examples from my tree company just to make it tangible. But before we do that, I think of two types of leading KPIs. The first is an employee doing a good job? That's an accountability tool, right? That's different than what you need as a business owner. You might need this to be a good manager, but that's different, right? Is the business doing okay? That's what you actually need as a business owner. That's the planning tool, right? And so what I'm like, accountability tools, we could be a whole nother session on. What I'm focused on is planning tools. How do you make sure your business is doing okay? And so when we look at this again, right, you can now start to map this against your various, whether it's employees or contractors or agencies, right? Like lead gen, you're holding accountable your PPC and SEO agency. Your website designer is in charge of conversion rate. Your marketing team is doing something around our pricing strategy, how we kind of retarget. So like you can understand how like each of these you might allocate as accountability tools to different people in your org, but you have to pick for yourself what are your planning KPIs. That's a very different thing than an accountability KPI. So for us, these are the leading KPIs I care about. Number of bids we give per week, which is very similar to meetings with ICPs. So that's my key leading indicator for sales. Closed sales per week, obviously, or conversion rate, which is what you said, right? More or less the same idea. And then backlog in weeks. It's a project-based business, right? So like every job has to be sold, scheduled, and contracted. And so to me, what backlog in weeks, it's a planning tool because it tells me how much room I have to actually add capacity or pull back capacity and push our production team. Very clearly, this is trailing of those two, right? Like, so I'm not saying you have to just pick the most leading indicator you could possibly find in your business. Yeah.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah.
So you pick bids per week. These are the leading ones.
Yes.
Sometimes guys over KPI things.
Yeah,
right? And
totally.
You had a bunch, and number of bids per week is a function of KPIs behind it.
Correct.
How did you decide where, and maybe you'll get to it, but how
Yeah.
did you decide where to say, okay, I don't want to go all the way down to the root.
Totally.
Because you don't want 100 KPIs.
No, you're right. So the number of bids per week starts with website traffic, right? Conversion from website traffic to lead forms to actual called and scheduled appointments. Problem is like everything above that I control right now. There's nobody else like in charge of it, or at least when I set this up. Luckily, I'm not as in charge of it now, but that's primarily why, because that bids per week is where my team takes over. Yeah, that's a good question. So these are accountability KPIs that I have for my team, kind of to your point, right? 4 and 5-star Google reviews, that's a leading KPI of repeat revenue for the crew leads. Callbacks or job fixes, those are leading KPIs of lost clients. But these are actually controllable by our crew leaders, but they're not the right planning. Like by the time this happens, I can't do much about it. But these are my, planning KPIs. And so importantly, like one person doesn't control them, right? So like I can't actually hold one person accountable to any of these, which if that's the case, like something else is going on. Like this is a system-wide concept. And so when I think about it, like you as a new owner or any owner, you need planning KPIs. The managers need accountability KPIs, right? Those are, I think I've flocked this to death. I'll move on. Any questions about that part though? No, all right. So tracking the KPI, importantly, without implementing a fancy vertical SaaS product. That's the part where I feel like I see so many searchers turned early business owners, they get spun around the axle where they're like, I just need this data flow to connect to there, this API to connect to that, and then I'll start tracking my KPIs, right? Like that's where people get stuck. And I want to give you some examples. So this is 2022, the year I bought the business, right? So I bought it in February 2022. I'm counting my bids per month and things are going really well, right? Like up and to the right, everything you want as a searcher. And you're like, hell yeah, I'm crushing this. This is gonna go great. And then we had August. And I had no fucking clue what was happening. It turns out people just go on vacation in August, which like I wasn't, and we were home service. And so that was a big part of that. But like in that moment, that's when you're that driver, a new driver in Singapore, right? You have no idea how seasonality shows up in your business. My seller had no tracking of this previously because he knew that would happen. He didn't freak out if that happened. And then it came back once people came back and the school year started, right? Same thing in November, December, then we get into our slow season from a seasonality standpoint. That's just part of how our business operates. But what's important is you start tracking it And then the next year you have year over year, right? What really matters here is being able to track year over year and be able to say, hey, okay, we're doing exactly what we expected in July. That's not our money month to figure out. What really matters is, can we offset the decline in August? And like, because you know this and you can actually plan, you say, hey, I'm throwing every fucking marketing dollar at the wall in August, right? I'm sending out the text to repeat clients. I'm sending out the emails, and that's what you offset, right? You can't do that in 2023 if you didn't know it from 2022 though, right? So to me, starting to track KPIs, the speed part of this is so that you start to have a data set to actually compare year on year, right? That's actually where this gets more useful. And so starting in any way possible is crucial. And again, this now I'm expecting it, but I'm able to offset it a little bit better. So now this is, thankfully we don't do this anymore, but this is for the first 2.5 years of running this business, this is what our bid calendar looked like. So each one of these is a in-person appointment for an arborist to meet with the client at their home to talk about trees, right? And so I'll show you the Google Calendar Zapier function I built. Wrong. For 2.5 years, I counted every week by hand. Literally all I did was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and it takes 30 seconds. I did that once a week forever and put my finger on the screen and counted. And you end up with an Excel spreadsheet, right? It's not that hard actually, right? It's you can just make data by doing it. And now I'm starting to track this specific week, this is March 25th to 29th of whatever year this is. I counted 39, that's a hard-coded number. I just typed in the 39 because I counted it, right? And then you start to get year to date. You get to start to see year to date, year over year. It's not complex. This is 169 weeks of data. I have this for every week since I bought the business. And now it's better. We have, or I'll show it to you later, but we have an actual data flow and stuff. Eventually you get better at this. But 2.5 years, we just counted once a week and you have real data. So here's the rest of that Excel. So we had no way to track closes when I bought the business because all of our bids were pen and paper. They were not on a digital invoicing. So the way I tracked it was I went into our sent inbox of our email and I looked for booking email sent, job confirmed. So I would just put in the search bar, job scheduled in quotes, and then it would pull up all the emails or scheduler it sent out being your job is scheduled. And I just counted those emails. That was how I counted closes for 6 months after we bought the business. Good enough, right? Basically booking email sent is roughly book jobs per week. And so I have data flow starting from before we eventually got on the CRM and the invoicing software, obviously, right? But that every incremental 6 months of data as a planning tool is so valuable for you as a small business owner. So no software to track this. Yes, went into sent email and just searched. So now I have the fancy software, right? This is some week in 2025. I have how many bids we gave. I have how many work orders got converted and the exact dollar amounts. Now my operations manager, she fills out that spreadsheet for me and she just has to pull it off of this. It's the exact same output though. It still goes in that same spreadsheet. It's just easier now because we have the software. But the data is what it is. And we have that historical data. So I updated this last week and you can see we have bids by quarter for all 4 years and now into the 5th year. This is how you run a small business, right? This is the whole thing. This is when do I hire the next salesperson? When do I need to cut my pricing? When do I need to push my pricing? And this all started from counting off of Google Calendar once a week in 2 minutes for 2.5 years. I'm gonna give you the other example, backlog in weeks. This one's more complex, which is why it's a good one. So we have this key issue in tree care, which is you book jobs out, and then the longer you book them out, the clients get wishier and washier, where they're I don't really want to sell. So you can't let backlog go too far, but if it's too tight, you run out of work and you guys don't have anything to do, right? So the key question for me always is, because of that dynamic and seasonality, how do I know if I have enough work scheduled for the winter that's coming? That's always the challenge. And the former owners would just lay off one team, right, for January and February. That actually works great. You don't run out of work if you lay off people. Like that's an easy answer. My goal was to not do that. It's bad for the team. You waste a bunch of training investment. And I was like, hey, like, can I run this business better? And so I started tracking backlog in weeks. And again, the seller, he had this thing in the back of his head is like, okay, in November, I want to be booked out to January. He knew it, you know what I mean? It's the same thing. Like all of these sellers, they know these businesses so much better than you do. They have that gut sense. I had no idea, so I had to measure it. So the way I did this was I just measured capacity hours. So we had 2 crews at the time, which means every week we have 80 hours of capacity. How much of that capacity is booked, right? So also measured in hours, and you just divide that. That's your backlog in weeks, right? Now the challenge you run into again, remember we're all on pen and paper, right? And even our, let's see, if you go back to Google Calendar, that's what our job schedule was. And so basically we had, these are all jobs that are booked. These are red slots were basically open slots that we hadn't filled at the moment. So all I did is I would literally just go through the next 12 weeks, count up all the open slots, add up the hours, and like, that's the math. Again, did this by hand for this next 12 weeks table, and you spit out a nice answer, 4.8 weeks. I'll skip the math. But the main thing here is, again, today, we just know our backlog. We know our pipeline in dollars. We know our pipeline in hours. We can pull all of that, but we wouldn't have had the comparison to the first 2.5 years unless we'd just been doing it manually. So let's talk about it. Like, how do you actually turn that into a planning tool, right? So this is my first year. I bought the business in February 2022. This is 2022. When I bought the business, we had 10, 11 weeks of backlog, and totally fine. It went down a little bit, and I was like, it's okay, it's slow season, all came back. But then I didn't do layoffs, right? Our first winter. That was my first true winter as the owner. And our backlog fell to 3 weeks. And like, this is the worst feeling, right? Like that's the moment as a business owner where you're like, I have no clue how this is gonna stop, what needs to happen. You're throwing everything at the wall in terms of like, you know, all the marketing. You're not able to do lead attribution anyway, so you're just throwing random ad dollars at everything. And it came back. Turns out like that is our seasonality. If I don't lay off the team, I mean, I got lucky, but also I lost a lot of money here because I was throwing so much money at bad advertising. But now I know what our actual cycle looks like if we do no layoffs. Next year, same thing happened, and now it's okay. Like, I'm not actually that stressed about it. And I pulled this forward even further. And so you can see here, that was that next year. We got down to the same kind of 3 weeks, but we didn't spend the money on the marketing this time. It came back naturally, so our profitability worked out. So, like, if you didn't know this year over year, you would just continue to freak out each year, right? Until you had developed enough scar tissue to know. This is a way to like try to get there without having to learn it all through scar tissue. And then here in last winter, we're like, hey, we're actually not going down as much as I thought we would go. Time to add a crew, right? And that's when we made the decision to add a 4th crew. Obviously, you add one more crew, it's even scarier this winter. But we know that, like that's what we're expecting. And we know as long as we can kind of stay somewhere in this 2 to 3 weeks through the end of April, which is where we're at right now, it should come back now coming into May. So that's like, you can make like every decision you're making in small business is so uncertain and based on such shitty data at all times. Like you're just trying to get directionally right. And this is how you get directionally right on when to add capacity. Couple thoughts here. These planning KPIs will lead you astray because like I said, they're not great data. And you know, we picked certain KPIs, right? We didn't actually go down all the way to the base. So I want to give you an example from 2022. So in April and May of 2022, you know, this is how many bids we had, how many jobs we had. And, you know, so we lost a little bit of backlog, which is normal in April and May because it's our slower season. It's the very end of our slow season. The next year in April and May 2023, we had 35% more bids than the year prior. We had 26 more closed jobs than the year prior. And our backlog still went down by 0.7 weeks. And at that time, I was going from 4.2 to 3.5. So it's like really scary at that point as opposed to 10.4 to 9.7. So if you look at that and you're like, how could that be? Like there's a conflating variable, right? And this is where you start to say, okay, like something has gone wrong here. Does anyone have a guess, thought as to what might, like if you got this data in your own business, where would your brain go? Oh. It's average job size. Our average job size had dropped dramatically. For some reason, our sales team just stopped like talking about the other trees on the property. Like they'd moved into being order takers as opposed to real advisors. But again, you don't like, clearly I missed something, but you also then don't know to look for something wrong without this in the first place. And so then, you find a solution, you go train the sales team. How do you walk a full property? Does that make sense? Kind of KPIs lead you wrong, and they also help you figure out why. So a couple punchlines from me. One, identify leading KPIs for your business, true leading KPIs. Differentiate between the planning and accountability KPIs. Don't overcomplicate tracking. I don't know how to stress this more. I made this whole presentation just for this point, really, because I've invested in 6 search deals also, and I talk to those searchers a lot, and that's one of the most common things I see is overcomplicating the actual tracking. And then make adjustments. Like over time, your planning KPIs, your leading KPIs, they might shift. Like don't be too precious about it, right? Like it's okay to change your mind. Basically, like I have no perfectionism in my body at all. Like I think I would have lost my mind if I was a perfectionist and trying to run this business. But a lot of business owners are more perfectionists than me, and I don't know how you guys do it. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good, right? Like that will destroy you mentally. That's it. That's what I got for you guys. But I would love to talk questions.